Hey guys, today is going to be such an exciting day because I am going to share my most valuable automation with you. I use it for over 2 years now, and in that time I made it work perfect. This video contains so much juice. I'm going to talk about helpers, I'm going to talk about scripts, I'm going to talk about automations, and I'm going to talk about how you can set up your own custom sensors. And at the end of the video, you've created your own professional garden watering system. So watch this. When I started out with Home Assistant, I really wanted to build one thing, and that was an automated garden watering system. I was always struggling with how much water the garden should get, how often I should water the garden, and for instance, when I was on holiday, I watered the garden every day. But that was really strange because when it was raining, it also got watered. And people were walking by and were thinking, what is this guy doing? He's watering his garden and it's raining. So that didn't really make much sense. So I thought, I can build this in Home Assistant. Now in my case, I use a special pump that pumps up water from the ground to water my garden. But you can use various other devices to do that. For this tutorial, you need a device that you can connect to your water pump or to your water tap, and that you can control remotely so that you can turn it on and off remotely, and that you can do that with Home Assistant. I use a water pump that is connected to a smart plug and that I can turn on and off remotely with Home Assistant. So that can also work. So let's go over all the things that we are going to build today. The starting points. The first thing is that we are going to water the garden in the morning at sunrise. And you might wonder, why in the morning and not in the evening? Well, when you water your plants in the evening, then the water drops stay on the plants during the whole night. And that can cause that your plants are going to rot. So that's why I'm doing this in the morning. Then the maximum days of monitoring the temperature and rainfall in a tree. So basically I have a time span of 3 days maximum, and then I start monitoring again. Then I'm going to reset all the values every 3 days if watering the garden was not needed, and I'm going to start monitoring again. And we are also going to reset all the values after the garden has been watered. We are going to monitor the rain that has fallen in the recent days. We are also going to monitor the rain that will fall the next 24 hours. And we are going to monitor the maximum temperature of the past days. So that is what we need. Then, when should we water the garden? When 1 day is over, we're going to check if the temperature has been above 31 degrees Celsius. If so, then we are going to water the garden for 90 minutes. When 2 days are over, then we're going to check if the temperature has been between 26 degrees and 31 degrees Celsius. And we're going to check if the rain that has fallen plus the expected rain is equal or below 15 millimeters. If so, then we are going to water the garden for 75 minutes. When 3 days are over, we have a couple of scenarios. The first scenario is, check if the temperature has been between 21 degrees and 26 degrees. And check if the rain that has fallen plus the expected rain is equal or below 10 millimeters. If so, water the garden for 60 minutes. The second scenario is, we are going to check if the temperature has been between 15 degrees Celsius and 21 degrees Celsius, and we are going to check if rain that has fallen plus expected rain is equal or below 10 millimeters. If so, we are going to water the garden for 45 minutes. And we are not going to water the garden if the temperature has been lower than 15 degrees Celsius for the past 3 days. Of course, you can experiment with these values. For me, these work fine, but maybe you would like to use different temperatures or different millimeters of rainfall, and that's totally up to you. So, what do we need for this? We need helpers. What helpers do we need? We need a helper input number maximum temperature measured. So that's the helper where we will store the maximum temperature that we measured in the past days. We need another helper, input number, total rain fallen. So that's where we store the total amount of rain that has been fallen, so in millimeters. Then another input number helper, the watering duration. That is where we store the time that our garden sprinkler should water the garden. Then we have an input date time that keeps track of the last watering day, so the last day that we watered the garden. And what do we need more? We also need sensors. We are going to use an integration which is called Openweathermap for this. And Openweathermap has a couple of sensors, and one of them is Openweathermap Rain, which shows us the rain that is currently falling. Then we have another Openweathermap sensor, and that's the Openweathermap temperature sensor. That shows us the current temperature, the current outside temperature. And we have an Openweathermap forecast precipitation that shows us the amount of rain that will fall in the upcoming days. We also have an Openweathermap forecast precipitation probability, and that will show us the chance that we will get rain in the next couple of days. Then we are going to create some custom sensors, and the first one is the current temperature is higher custom sensor. That basically shows us if the current temperature, the current outside temperature, is higher than the temperature that we already stored in our helper. Another custom sensor is the day since last watering day custom sensor. That custom sensor will show us the number of days that are between the last day that we watered the garden and today. And we have the total expected precipitation custom sensor that will show us the total expected rain in the next 24 hours. And we have the total rain fallen plus expected custom sensor, and that shows us the total rain that has been fallen plus the expected rain in the next 24 hours. We also need scripts. The most important script is the script that is going to water the garden. And the other script that we're going to create is a script that's going to reset the helper values. And then the automations that we're going to create. We're going to create an automation that adds the current rain to the total rain fallen helper. We're also going to create an automation that checks if the garden should be watered, yes or no. And we're going to create an automation that checks the maximum temperature when the temperature changes. Now, I use Openweathermap to measure the rain fallen and the precipitation and also the outside temperature. But it might be that you have your own devices that can do that too. So if you have that, you can use the sensors of those devices in this tutorial. But if you don't have that, Openweathermap works perfectly fine. Now let's head over to Home Assistant and set it up. This automated garden watering system depends heavily on Openweathermap. It needs to connect to Openweathermap through an API, and for that you need an account at Openweathermap. But it's free, so you can create an account there. So let's go over to Openweathermap. The link is in the description below. And you can create an account. I already have an account, so I'm going to sign in. Submit. So now I can create an API key. For that, I'm going to click on my account and I go to My API Keys. And now you can see that you can create an API key here. So you can give it a name and click on Generate, and then it generates an API key. I already created one, so I am going to copy this so that I have this in my memory already. One thing that you must know is that when you created that API key, and this is really important, that it might take quite a while before it really gets active. Even if there is active shown here, it doesn't mean it's active yet. It can take up to 2 hours before it gets active. So if you cannot use that API key in Home Assistant, which is our next step, don't worry, just wait and try it after a couple of hours and then you'll be fine. So now we are going back to Home Assistant and we are going to install Openweathermap. For that we are going to Settings, and we're going to Devices and Services. And now we are going to add integration, and I'm going to search for Openweathermap. Click on it, and now I can paste my API key here. Then I'm going to choose for mode hourly, and I'm going to submit this. I already got it installed, so I get a message that the location is already configured, so I'm going to close it now. And I'm going to search for my integration Openweathermap here. And you see that I can reconfigure it and I can change hourly to daily one call hourly, one call daily, but hourly is fine. And you see I have one service and 26 entities, and if I click on the entities, you see all the entities of Openweathermap. For instance, the one that we need is Openweathermap rain, which shows us if rain is currently falling. So currently there's 0 millimeters rain, but there has been some rain fallen today. So that is really cool. I now got it working. I also have Openweathermap temperature that shows us the outside temperature at the moment. So that is also fine. So if you have this, then Openweathermap works and you can go on to the next step. By the way, did you know that you can really help me by giving this video a thumbs up, subscribing to my channel and ticking the notification bell? That would be really awesome. Thank you. Now let's set up the helpers for our automated garden watering system. For that we go to Settings, then we go to Devices and Services, and then we go to Helpers. And I already created the helpers that we are going to need. And I'm going to show them to you. By the way, all the code that I used in this tutorial can be found on my GitHub page, and the link to my GitHub page is in the description below. Now you see these 4 helpers, and these are the 4 helpers that we are going to need. The first one is sprinkler last watering day. So let's open that. You see it is an input date time helper, and the name is sprinkler underscore last underscore watering underscore day. And it stores the date that we watered the garden for the last time. So if I look at this, there is 26/5 of 2022 here. The other helper is the maximum temperature measured helper, which is an input number helper. The input number helper has a minimum value of 0, maximum value of 100, step size of 0.01, and the unit of measurement is degrees Celsius. This helper stores the maximum temperature that has been measured in the past couple of days. Then the total rain fallen helper, also an input number helper that shows us the total amount of millimeters rain that has been fallen, also with a minimum value of 0, maximum 100, and step size of 0.01. Then we go to the sprinkler watering duration helper. That also is an input number helper, and what I'm actually doing is that in the automations that we are going to create, I'm going to set the value for this helper, and I'm going to explain that a little bit later in this tutorial. So that is what this is storing. It is storing the minutes that the sprinkler should water the garden when it is being triggered. Minimum value 0, maximum value 100, step size 1. So these are the helpers that you need for this automation. The next things that we are going to set up are the sensors. And there are some sensors that we are going to use from Openweathermap, and there are also some custom sensors that we are going to create now. So the Openweathermap sensors are already known. Those are these sensors. So let's search for Openweathermap rain. This is one of the sensors that we are going to use, the sensor Openweathermap rain, which is already there in your system if you set up Openweathermap. We are also going to use Openweathermap temperature. This sensor shows the outside temperature. We are going to use the Openweathermap forecast precipitation. That is this sensor. And we are going to use the Openweathermap forecast precipitation probability that shows us the chance that we will get rain in the next 24 hours. But the most important thing is that we are going to create our custom sensors now. If you want to create custom sensors, you need to be able to edit files in homeassistant in YAML. And for that you can use 2 different tools. You can either use Studio Code Server or the file editor, and if you don't have them installed, you can install them by going to Settings, then going to Add-ons, then click on Add-on Store and search on file editor and install that, or search for Studio Code Server and install that. I use Studio Code Server, but you can also use file editor. After you installed one of these two, then you can go on to the next step. So now it's going to be exciting, because we are going to create a crucial part of this whole garden watering system, and those are the custom sensors. If you don't know what custom sensors are, I created 2 videos about that before this, and you might watch them so you understand better what custom sensors are and how you can create them. But you can also just follow this video and see how far you get. You can always watch the other videos later, so it's up to you. Now let's go to Home Assistant and set it up. For the custom sensors, we are going to Studio Code Server, and what you see here is all the files that are on your Home Assistant server. There are 2 files that we are going to need here. The first one is the configuration.yaml file. You have to make sure that you have one line in there, and that is this line. Template include templates.yaml. There's one important remark that I have to make, and that is that we are going to make use of the modern way of setting up template sensors in Home Assistant. We are going to make use of the templates.yaml file, and that means that all your template sensors should be in that file. So if you also have template sensors in your configuration.yaml or in your sensors.yaml, please move them over to your templates.yaml and change the code so that it is according to how it should look in the templates.yaml, and then you'll be fine. Otherwise, I think this is not going to work. So this line here points to another file on your Home Assistant server, which is called templates.yaml. If you don't have that file yet, you can create it by clicking on this link, new file, and if you already have it, you can just open the file templates.yaml. I already have it, so I'm going to open it. By the way, if you change anything in your configuration.yaml, you have to restart Home Assistant after that. So do that first. If you don't know how to do that, you go to Settings, then you go to System, and then you click on Restart, and then Home Assistant gets started. We are going back to Studio Code Server, like that, and we are going to open templates.yaml. Let's make this a little bit smaller here, and I'm going to explain to you what these custom sensors are doing. I have 4 custom sensors here, and the first one is the most difficult one, but I'm still going to explain it at first. So it's the sprinkler total expected precipitation custom sensor that is going to show me how much rain in millimeters is being expected based on that precipitation, but also based on the chance that it will fall. So what you see here is a name and a unique ID. The unique ID is something that you can create either by going to a special site to create unique IDs, but in Studio Code Server you also have the possibility to click on your right mouse button and select Generate UUID at cursor, and then it will be generated there. I'm not going to do that because I already had that over there. So I have a unique ID, I have an icon, MDI weather pouring, I have a unit of measurement, and now the state. And the state is the most interesting part, because that will return the value of the total precipitation. So what is this doing here? It's first saying total precipitation is 0, and then it's going to create a namespace. A namespace is needed if you, for instance, use a for loop, which I am using, because then you can use a variable outside of the for loop to be filled with values that you retrieve within the for loop. So I'm creating a namespace, then I'm going to say within that namespace, I'm going to call that total precipitation, I'm going to set that to 0, and I'm going to define some day parts. And now I have to explain why I'm doing that. And for that we are going to the developer tools, and I'm going to states, I'm going to retrieve the entity Openweathermap, and if I open that entity, what you see here is a forecast. And you see in that forecast you have, every time you have a date time, you have a precipitation, and you have a precipitation probability. And I am going to use these values to determine the precipitation for the next couple of hours or days. And what you see now is that this daytime is now set to 3 o'clock, to 6 o'clock, to 9 o'clock, and to midnight. So every 3 hours it will retrieve the precipitation and the precipitation probability. So you can find it here. So every 3 hours you will find how much rain will fall and what the probability is of that rain will fall. So for instance here the precipitation is 0.26 and the probability is 37%. What I am going to do is that I'm going to take 37% of this precipitation to determine what the chance of precipitation is, the millimeters. So that is what I'm going to use. And I have 3 hours every time. So let's say every 3 hours is a day part. So what you see here is that I have a day part in the range of 0 to 7, which is 8. 0 to 7 is 8. And each day part was 3 hours, as we saw in the developer tools. So 3 times 8 is 24, so that's 24 hours. So I'm going to loop through these 8 day parts and I'm going to set the precipitation, which is the state attribute weather.openweathermap forecast dot precipitation, and I'm going to set the precipitation probability, which is the state attribute for Openweathermap forecast day part precipitation probability. And I'm going to divide that by 100 so that I can use it in the next calculation. So if the precipitation probability is higher than 0, then I'm going to say the precipitation is the precipitation times the precipitation probability. And then I'm going to say the total precipitation is the total precipitation plus the precipitation that I just determined. And that is something that I'm going to do 8 times. And then in the end I have the total precipitation and I'm going to return that value as a float and I'm going to round it to 0 decimals. So that's the first sensor. Then we go to the next sensor, which is the total rain fallen plus expected. Again, a name and a unique ID and an icon, and the unit of measurement is millimeters. And the state is, it is the states of the input number sprinkler total rain fallen, which is our helper that stores the total rain fallen value, plus the state of the sensor sprinkler total expected precipitation that we just created. And I made it a float again, which is not really needed because it's already returned as a float, but just to be sure. And we are going to round the total value to 2. Then the next custom sensor, that is sprinkler days since last watering day. Again, a name, a unique ID, an icon, and the state is a calculation that is creating a timestamp of now, so the current date and time, minus the timestamp of the value which is in our helper, our input datetime helper sprinkler last watering day. It's going to divide it by 86,400, creates a float of it and rounds it to 2. We are going to use this value in an automation later. Then the sprinkler current temperature is higher. That is also a custom sensor that we are going to use in an automation later. So again, the name, a unique ID, and an icon, MDI check. And what the state is doing, it is an if-else statement. So if the Openweathermap temperature is higher than the value that is in our input number field, which is called sprinkler maximum temperature measured, then return true, else return false. So it returns true if the current temperature is higher than the temperature that we already saved. And we are going to use this in an automation too. After you saved your templates.yaml file, you have to reload your templates.yaml file in Home Assistant, and you can do that in 2 ways. The first way is by going into your Studio Code server, click on Ctrl-Shift-P and search for Reload Template, and then you can click on Home Assistant Reload Template Entities, and then they will be reloaded into Home Assistant. The other way of doing this is by going to the developer tools, then you go to YAML, scroll down, and there you click on template entities. And this way you can also reload your template entities. So we have our helpers, we have our sensors, and the next step is that we have to create some automations. For automations, we go to settings, we go to automations and scenes. I'm going to search for a sprinkler in my case, because I already created them. Of course, for the automation counts also that all the code can be found on my GitHub page, and the link is in the description below. So we have 3 automations here. Add current rain to total rain fallen. Let's open that one so I can show you what it is doing. What this automation is doing is that it adds the rain that is currently falling to our helper, which stores the total rain fallen. So it is a single automation, and the trigger type is state, and the entity that it's going to trigger on is Openweathermap rain. And I'm not going to fill in anything more. So basically every time when the value of Openweathermap rain changes, I'm going to do something. And for that we are going to actions. And in actions I'm going to use some YAML because I need some template code here. So I have a service, and the service is called input number set value. So it's going to set the value of an input number helper. The entity ID is the input number helper. So the input number helper is called sprinkler underscore total underscore rain underscore fallen. And the value is taking the states of that input number sprinkler total rain fallen and adds the state of this sensor Openweathermap rain millimeters to it. So then you get a higher value in the sprinkler total rain fallen. So that's the first automation. Now we go to the second automation. That one is called check if garden should be watered. And this is the most complex automation that we have in our system. So let's open it and I can show you what it does. So it's called check if garden should be watered. It is mode single. And if we scroll down to the triggers, I have only one trigger, and that trigger is the sun trigger, and it triggers at sunrise. So every time at sunrise, our system is going to check if the garden should be watered or not. Now we go to actions, and what you see here is that I'm using a choose action first, because I have different scenarios, and for every scenario I have a different option. So our first option has a couple of conditions. The first condition is that it's going to check if the maximum temperature measured is above 31 degrees. So the entity is our helper, which is called maximum temperature measured, and it's going to check if that is above 31 degrees. Then another condition is that it's going to see how much rain has been fallen. It's going to check on our custom sensor, which is called total rain fallen plus expected, and it's going to see if the value of that sensor is below 20.1 millimeters. If both conditions are met, then we are going to call a service. And this is interesting because what this service is doing, it is going to set a value of an input number helper. The input number helper that we created for this is the watering duration input number helper. And we are going to set the value to 90, so to 90 minutes. And then we are going to call a service which calls a script, sprinkler water the garden. And I'm going to show that script after I explained all the automations. Then we are going to our next option. So the next option is again checking a numeric state, but this time first checking the days since last watering day. So it's checking if it was between 2 and 3 days since the last watering day. The next condition is that it's going to check the maximum temperature measured, but if it was between 26 and 31.1 degrees. So it checks if our input number helper maximum temperature measured is between 26 and 31.1 degrees. And there's another condition, it's going to check how much rain has been fallen. So it checks based on our custom sensor, total rain fallen plus expected, if the rain fallen was below 15.1 millimeters. If so, it's going to call a service again and sets the input number this time for the watering duration to 75 minutes. And then it's going to call a service, it's going to call the script water the garden, which I will explain later. Then option 3. Option 3 looks a lot like option 2, but now it's going to check if our sprinkler days since last watering days, which is our custom sensor, has a value between 3 and 4. So let's say 3 days. And it's going to check if the maximum temperature measured value of our input number helper is between 21 degrees and 26.1 degrees. And it's going to check if our custom sensor total rainfall and plus expected is below 10.1 millimeters. In that case, we are going to set the input number to 60 minutes. And then we are going to call the service script sprinkler water the garden. So call that script. So now we're going to option 4. They all look a lot alike. This option also checks if sprinkler days since last watering day was above 3 and below 4, so after 3 days. It then checks if the maximum temperature measured is between 15 degrees and 21.1 degrees, and it checks if the total rain fallen plus expected is below 10.1 millimeters. In that case, we are going to set the input number to 45 minutes. And we are going to call the script sprinkler water the garden. And then there's one other option, that's the last option, option 5. That's basically saying, well, if all the other options are not met and it's more than 3 days ago that we watered the garden, then reset the helper values. Then basically the garden didn't need to be watered the past 3 days. We can reset the helper values and start monitoring the next 3 days. So there's one automation left, and that automation is called check maximum temperature when temperature changes. This automation checks if the current temperature is higher than the temperature that we stored before in our helper. So let's open this. As you can see, it has a name, the mode is single, and if we go to triggers, you see that it triggers on the state of Openweathermap temperature. So if Openweathermap temperature changes, it is going to trigger and we have to do something. Now we also have a condition here, and the condition is checking the state of our custom sensor sprinkler current temperature is higher, and it checks if that state is true. So if that condition is true, then do something. Now we go to actions, and in actions you see that we are going to call a service input number set value, and I had to do this in YAML again. The target is our helper, which is input number sprinkler maximum temperature measured, and the value of that target will be the value of our sensor Openweathermap underscore temperature. So if Openweathermap underscore temperature has a higher value than the value that was already stored in our helper sprinkler maximum temperature measured, then it will be overwritten. I explained the automations now, and there's one thing more that we need to do, and that is heading over to scripts. By the way, did you know that you can really help me by giving this video a thumbs up, subscribing to my channel and ticking the notification bell? That would be really awesome. Thank you. So for scripts, we go to settings, automations and scenes, we click on scripts, search for sprinkler again, and I created 2 scripts here. The first script is sprinkler reset helper values. Let's open that. What this script is doing is resetting the helper values as soon as the garden has been watered, or after 3 days when the garden didn't need to be watered, so when we start the whole 3-day process again. So you see the mode is single, and what we are doing is we are calling a service input number.set. We're going to set the helper total rain fallen and sprinkler watering duration to 0. You can choose entities by clicking on choose entity and then choose your helper there. And we are also setting some other values. We are also setting the value of input datetime set datetime, and that is something that I needed to do in YAML because I wanted to set it to now, and that is a template code. So what you see here is that the service is input datetime set datetime. that the entity ID is input daytime sprinkler last watering day, so that is our helper. And the data template is setting the value daytime to now. Then I added another action that is called input number set value, and again I had to use YAML for this because I use some template code. The service is input number set value, the target is the entity ID input number sprinkler maximum temperature measured, so that is our helper, and the value of that target is going to be the state of our sensor Openweathermap temperature, so our current temperature. And what I also did, and that's something that you may not need to do, but you might do it, is adding another action which is called call service, and the service is called notification, send a notification via mobile app iPhone X add. So if you choose call service here, you can choose services here, and I've chosen the send notification via mobile app iPhone X add. And I gave it a message now resetting the sprinkler values. So what this does is that I get a message on my phone that says now resetting the sprinkler value, so I know that. The next and final script that we need is the script that actually turns on and turns off our water pump or our smart plug to water the garden. So for that I have this script, sprinkler water the garden. Let's open this. You see it has a name, sprinkler water the garden, an icon, mode is single, and here's the sequence. The first thing that I do here, and you might want to do this too or not, is that I'm going to send a message to my phone that watering the garden has started and how long the watering will last. So what you see in the message is saying start watering the garden for, and then some code that gets the states of the input number helper sprinkler watering duration. And that helper contains the minutes that we filled with the automation that I just showed. So 45 minutes, 60 minutes, 75 minutes or 90 minutes. Then I'm going to turn on my garden sprinkler, and in my case it's a device. So that device, and the device in my case is a smart plug, and the action is turn on. So I can choose turn off, turn on, and I've chosen for turn on. Then I'm going to add a delay. And I'm going to add a delay in minutes, and the minutes value I get from the state's input number sprinkler watering duration that we filled with our automation that I showed. So again, 45, 60, 75 or 19 minutes. And during the delay my garden sprinkler will stay on. Then after that delay I'm going to turn off the garden sprinkler, and I'm going to call the script sprinkler reset helper values to reset all my helper values back to 0, to the current date and to the current temperature. And then again I'm calling a service to send a notification to my phone that watering the garden has stopped. Now we're ready. You created your helpers, you created your custom sensors, you created your automations, and you created your scripts to get your home automated garden watering system up and running. I also created this dashboard to monitor all the values of my helpers, my sensors, my automations and my scripts, so that if something weird happens that I can see what actually is going on in my system. And I recommend you to do the same, because you can easily make a mistake setting this up, and this will really help you in debugging it. Now, I hope this video helped you. If so, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to my channel, tick on the notification bell, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!